The core of the Earth is 6,000 degrees Celsius, the same temperature as the surface of the Sun. Anywhere in the world, if you drill deep enough, you reach temperatures far beyond what we need to produce baseload clean energy. To quickly scale geothermal development globally, we need a detailed understanding of how deep the heat is and what rock types exist in areas of interest. Having reliable, high-resolution maps of global temperature at depth, particularly within a few hundred miles of the world's population centers, would be an invaluable asset, decreasing project development risk and increasing the likelihood of funding. So, what collaborations can we build to produce maps showing global temperature at depth? What technologies and methodologies can we bring to bear from the oil and gas industry to produce these maps? And can oil and gas data reveal where in the world geothermal's low-hanging fruit lies? Let's explore.
Hi folks, my name is Mike Aros. I'm your moderator for today's meeting of the minds. I have really enjoyed getting to know our panel today, and collectively they represent more than about a century of knowledge and experience. And we're gonna have a great conversation, about 45 minutes with some questions and answers from you guys. I just wanted to introduce a little bit of why I'm here. This is my second Pivot 2020-2021 conference. And what we did last year during the pandemic was really an amazing experience. It really galvanized in me the desire to join the geothermal exploration and development projects that are going on globally during this global energy transition. And I'm really inspired by our panelists today who are taking on some of these toughest challenges that we face as an industry. And today specifically, we're going to talk about the groundwork around data that's required for this effort. And our folks in general bring a lot of interesting perspectives to bear on that from multiple perspectives. So my personal background, I'm interested in this from a geochemical perspective, having worked on clay mineralogy and paleotemperature work, and more recently professionally to help build integrated subsurface geological reservoir models to profitably develop high pressure and high temperature supercritical reservoirs for CO2 injection onshore, as well as deep water brine injection. And our panelists have a wider range of diverse expertise, as you'll see. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce them, starting with Isabelle Champefort. Take it away.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure in which part of the world you all are joining in. So my name is Isabelle Champefort. I am a senior scientist at GNS Science in New Zealand. I am the program leader of Geothermal, the next generation, who is looking for exploring the supercritical resources of New Zealand, particularly in the topovolcanic zone. I am also leading some work in emission and degassing of natural geothermal system in volcanic area, as well as looking at some high temperature research for governmental funded from New Zealand. So high temperature geothermal, and that is me.
Great, let's go to Ellie next.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be on this panel, so thanks for the invitation. So my name is Ellie McInnes, I'm the head of CGG Geothermal Science, and prior to this role, I worked mostly in international new ventures and global exploration at a number of different oil companies. And I'm especially excited to be taking part in Pivot because last year really kind of marked the start of my journey into geothermal. And for me, and also for the industry, it's been a really rapid learning, just the advancements and the level of excitement and the types of clients that we're speaking to. You know, they're people from all parts of the industry are starting to get interested. So to me, that's really positive. As a company, CGG have been involved in geothermal for almost 18, 19 years. We've done over 130 projects globally. Most of these projects have been in the high enthalpy traditional geothermal areas. My role and my team, we're really looking to expand geothermal beyond these well-developed areas. Our main focus is sedimentary basins, but we have an interest in all geological settings. And we bring together our deep subsurface understanding, along with huge, vast data sets that we gathered together from oil and gas and mining, public sources, water chemistry. And it's one of the main things that I'm excited about is this collaboration between all the different groups, universities and corporate and governments. And by sharing all this different data types, we can really make progress quite quickly. So thanks again.
Great. Ken, you're allowed to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ken Wiesian. I'm a geothermal geophysicist and associate director of the Bureau of Economic Geology here at the University of Texas at Austin. It's an honor to be on the panel today with fellow panelists and to the audience from around the world. My current research projects here involve a whole state assessment of the geothermal resources in Texas with an eye towards the new geothermal anywhere paradigm, as well as an Air Force funded project looking at putting in a geothermal power plant on the south side of Houston at a small base called Ellington Field. Elsewhere at the university and the Bureau and such, we have people that are involved with the Forge project, as well as the Cornell direct use project. And in the petroleum engineering department in particular, several endowed senior chair professors are working on or leading projects in new techniques in geothermal drilling. Thank you.
Fantastic. How about you, Silvio?
Thank you, Mike. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am Silvio Livescu, the pressure pumping chief scientist at Baker Hughes, and also the data science and engineering analytics technical director on the Society of Petroleum Engineers International Board. My interests are related to well construction and production engineering and well and reservoir monitoring, downhole telemetry, and of course, data science and artificial intelligence applied to hydrocarbons production and geothermal now. And just like everybody else, I'm happy to be here today. I'm honored to be with the other panelists talking about reservoir characterization. And just like Ellie, my journey in geothermal really picked up last year after Pivot 2020. So I'm more than happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. I thought maybe General Wiesian, we start with you. You know, the Bureau of Economic Geology that you work with has extensive access to oil and gas data in particular. And I'm curious how you envision using this and other data sets to produce these high resolution products, lithology maps at scale, various things like that.
Okay, yes. We have a long history of working closely with industry and have access to large amounts of data. We have here, as do others around the world, a massive library of well logs and cores. And personally, I think that's very ripe ground and low-hanging fruit for machine learning applications, particularly when you're talking about primary data, which is temperature for geothermal, and you're looking at what is a very noisy data set like bottom hole temperatures, which still don't have all that sophisticated correction methods to them. I think incorporating a big data analysis using machine learning really has a lot of potential to improve the quality of our data. Similarly, an even less well exploited resource would be the core libraries, where one of your primary or main secondary data points are thermal conductivities, which are essential but are fairly rare as far as being well determined. And there are various methods for determining those with a formula, but again, I think that's another area that's ripe for machine learning applications.
Fantastic. Yeah, and for our audience too, if you have questions that you'd like to share, please go ahead and we'll work to filter those in as we can. And I'm going to continue to try to let everybody have some time with our panelists. So Isabel, your research has included a lot of detailed subsurface modeling, integrating a pretty wide variety of data to characterize these thermal fields, including the supercritical domain. I'm curious, what novel low-cost approaches to data gathering, or really any approaches to interpretation, are exciting you these days as we improve our ability to understand and develop?
Yeah, as you said, like, I mean, it's to understand the geothermal system, particularly in the field beyond the known conventional, like that's what I'm looking, right? This has been quite challenging. And that's where coupling all those data set for us with modeling has actually been really, really important. And we didn't go into traditional modeling because we are going beyond the, well, beyond the supercritical, right? So supercritical for water. So you need some serious equation of state to sustain some of this modeling. So we gathered with some, particularly for our program, we're looking with some people that have developed some code originally associated with in mining. So we're bringing some of their knowledge that they associate with some experience in Iceland, particularly. And we are merging into, or we're trying to merge some of our large seismic, magnetotelluric, magnetic gravity, geochemistry data sets into some of them, to constrain some of their modeling. To be able to do that, though, you still need to have a very good understanding of what is the fizzing of your crust, I will say. And so seismic and geophysics in general is the go-to method. One of the things that excite me right now is to try, well, there's all this application, obviously, in AI that we're just starting, I think, touching in geothermal. That's going to be a tremendous change, I think. But integrating data is really something that what we haven't been able to capture very well in geothermal and conventional is how to actually merge at the reservoir scale once we know more or less where you can linking the chemistry of what's happening at the surface, or if you have some well down, with some actually proper geophysical modeling. And it's not something that is necessarily easy to merge because those are very different data sets. So we're trying a different option of how we can try to model some of this chemical reaction. So that is a very exciting thing for me, for sure. But the need for an integrated data set when you're working in hydrothermal system, it's a must, because they are geological objects that are not making one things, if you want. So we need all the cooperation and all the discipline. And of course, the more we have an integrated data, the more you can constrain any machine learning in the background as well. So yeah, that's one of the things that excites me, merging data sets for sure. Low cost, obviously modeling, it's a lot of power, brain power costs, and you just need like super computers, but to run some of the model. One thing as well that I could add is that we have been trying really to advance is, I mean, not me, I must admit, that's some of my colleagues, because it's beyond my skill, is actually refining some of geophysical coding to down. They're doing an amazing job, and there's so much innovation in geophysics right now. But what we need is really to pass from a regional scale geophysics to actually having something that is target scale, where you can target your drilling more efficiently. And when you are beyond the conventional in field where you don't have drilling, or you're at greater depths, you do not have that resolution. So improving the resolution has been really something we are looking carefully.
Fantastic. There's a lot to unpack there too, and I appreciate the comments you're making that echo what Ken's saying too, around machine learning, etc. I'd like to pivot now to Ellie and Sylvia. I guess both of you. Ellie, at CGG, you sit at the helm of some of the largest efforts globally to integrate geothermal data, and Sylvia at Baker Hughes, and working with the Society of Petroleum Engineers, you tackled some of just the hugest issues describing this rapidly developing field and also reservoir scale technology applications. How do you both see this developing landscape of data, and maybe how has it changed in the last decade? And I'll start with you, Ellie.
Thanks, Mike. So first of all, when my team and I think about geothermal data, we take a really wide definition. And the reason we do that is to help us to understand not just the subsurface characterization, but also the opportunities, the commercial opportunities. And I think for geothermal, you know, at the end of the day, we need it to have commercial opportunities. So when we talk about the subsurface data, and this ties in with Ken and Isabel's comments, you know, we're really focused on understanding and characterizing the geological setting. We need to understand the tectonic regime. We need to have a really good handle on heat flow. And as discussed, temperature at depth measurements are very complex, and trying to really QC and collate and understand where that data has come from and how reliable it is a massive task. And we're talking global data sets here. The other thing that my team's currently really interested in is understanding the shallower section, what the temperature profiles are in this shallower sections. And that's sometimes difficult because the oil and gas, you know, we drill through those sections and we're looking at the deeper sections to get to our targets. So understanding that shallow section and the mineralogy and the lithology, is it acting as a conductor or an insulator? You know, we have to think about all these things when we build our temperature models. The other thing that's really important is flow rates. Just like in oil and gas, what's our permeability? Which fractures are open, which are closed? What kind of permeability do we have? And again, porosity, water chemistry, fluid chemistry. So when we talk subsurface data, that's kind of encompasses the main parts. And then from this, we think about the above ground. So for example, what's the local infrastructure? Where are the local population centers? What's you know, agricultural energy needs? What's the grid system like? Are we looking for a baseload power with high temperature opportunities to go into the grid, or are we looking at lower medium temperature that we can you know, use for cascading use to the local markets? So it's kind of quite different from oil and gas, where you have a product and you ship it and that's fine. With geothermal, there's a lot of different variables, and trying to work out what is the best end use for the opportunities that we identify. And then another thing that we're really interested in is what does our fluid chemistry data tell us about potential for critical mineral production? And that's something I know there's a session on later in the week, but that can be a commercial game changer for clients. So trying to not just think about the subsurface, but think about where the opportunities lie, what kind of portfolio can we build?
Okay, it sounds like you're getting into a lot of really interesting data sets there, and maybe we can touch on some of those again. How about you, Sylvia?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So wow, great comments from Ken, Isabel, and Ellie. I agree with everything said, and I want to add a few things here. Well, first of all, let me start by talking just 1 minute about Baker Hughes and what we are doing. So I'm sure many people know, and for those who don't know, Baker Hughes is one of the largest oilfield services companies with operations in more than 120 countries around the world. And now we are a global energy technology company. So we have extensive experience related to reservoir characterization in most, if not all, hydrocarbon fields around the world. And now we are extending that experience, diversified experience, to geothermal applications. And we are talking here about, as I said, formation, subsurface characterization, and all our operations related to drilling, to production, and so on. Now, talking about data, I would like to start with data acquisition. And so for us in the oil field, actually, one of the biggest challenge we have is to acquire the data, and to acquire good data, not just any data. And so I believe that there are huge opportunities for microseismic monitoring, like mentioned before, and more efficient drilling and wellbore placement to mitigate project risk and reduce costs. This again was mentioned before, but also artificial intelligence related reservoir monitoring for field and power plant optimization. And when I say that, I'm really looking at all sides of what it means actually to produce energy from a geothermal resource. So just like Ellie said, we are producing oil and gas from many kind of reservoirs, and I think one solution is not going to fit a geothermal resource as well. So we need to look first for the low-hanging fruits, and also we need to see where the value is, right? But in order for us to get to that value, we need to collaborate, and only diversified experience, I think, can get us there as soon as possible. So the research and technology deployment, from my point of view, are going to be around high temperature telemetry, the sensors and electronics. And so right now the electronics have a temperature limit because of the oil and gas applications. We need to increase that for geothermal applications. And software, mathematical modeling, numerical modeling, everything related to data science and artificial intelligence. Now, related to your question, Mike, about the technology applications in the last decade, I can say I have been deeply involved with well intervention telemetry for oil and gas applications. And again, I can say that in the last 10 years, we started to use downhole telemetry for well intervention operations for oil and gas. And both systems consist of downhole sensors and optical fibers, and of course the software for visualizing the data, interpreting the data, analyzing the data, all that. And the goal is really to improve, to increase the production at a lower cost. So the initial reaction of some operators back 10 years ago or so was that both systems increased the operational cost compared to conventional well interventions without telemetry systems. And it took our industry, the oil and gas industry, several years to see how much value both systems bring in terms of risk mitigation, increased operational efficiency and shorter operational times, cost reduction, operational cost reduction, and overall increased production post-intervention. I think we are now at the same tipping point for geothermal applications. So downhole telemetry systems for data acquisition and artificial intelligence related reservoir monitoring technologies are tremendous opportunities for geothermal. But now talking about collaboration and temperature maps and how we can use the data to come up with temperature maps and basin maps. I want to give an example from SPE, Society of Petroleum Engineers, and let me put my SPE hat now. And I want to talk for a couple of minutes about a recent datathon organized by two of the largest SPE sections, Calgary and the Gulf Coast in Houston, and Untapped Energy, a non-profit data science and analytics organization from Calgary. This is an outstanding collaboration example of where we should head to as a global geothermal community. So the organizing committee of more than 20 very dedicated volunteers spent more than 6 months planning this event with weekly meetings and so. And the datathon was attended by more than 240 very passionate data scientists and oil and gas professionals from at least 14 countries around the world. The objective was to use data from more than 800 wells from Alberta in Canada and Texas in the United States for estimating the formation temperatures, creating 2 basin temperature models, and evaluating the geothermal potential of those 2 basins by either converting existing oil and gas wells or drilling new wells. I encourage everyone interested in this datathon to visit their website. Just Google Geothermal Experience 2021 SPE, and you'll find it. You can register for free to watch the videos of the competition and data bootcamps. So the event took 2 months. It had, everything about geothermal energy training, about data science training, and so on, and the competition itself. I'm sure that you will be surprised by everything you will find and learn there. But one last thing I want to mention now is that based on the tremendous success of this datathon in North America, later this year, we are going to have another one in Europe this time, organized by 4 European SPE sections, one in London, the Netherlands, Italy, and Bucharest. And so I know they are still discussing about the scope of this competition. However, they are looking also at the economics of geothermal project. So this is all very new for all of us, but the potential for using data for geothermal applications is obvious, and this datathon is a very clear example of what we can do with data. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to go to Ken in a minute to talk about maybe some of the regional data he might suggest or think about for greenfield geothermal development. But I wanted to touch a little bit on what you're saying, Sylvia, about the collaboration space that you've seen, and also some of the applications from oil and gas that may have been, successful in the last, decade or so. And that's something I'd open to everybody if you had other thoughts about, because in my mind, it's especially timely. And, the downhole telemetry data you're talking about in particular, the rise of DOS and the remote sensing applications we have in general and wellbores is a really interesting new burgeoning frontier. And so, yeah, if there's things that you guys would like to touch on, please interrupt me about the benefits of oil and gas learning that we've applied. But also, Ken, I wanted to be sure I touch base with you again on the data side. As we're talking about regional data in particular, you mentioned a few of the data sets that you find interesting. I'm curious, in general, how we're getting access to this data and whether these efforts are yielding new fruit or seeing new access potentially. I know that open access is a question as well for a lot of folks, and that's kind of the elephant in the room for all of us, is around access. So there's a lot, but pick up where you'd like to.
Okay, well, yes, there is a lot there. The access is improving. There's already good reservoirs of data of the national system here in the US and others around the world. There's definitely a need to standardize those on just simple things like formatting and then integrating up to larger scale, a whole worldwide scale at as much resolution as we can get. There is, as you're kind of touching on, a lot of data sitting in industrial libraries, and that takes relationships to get access to. On the oil and gas side, we have done that on a fairly regular basis here at the Bureau. You can protect it in different ways. You can anonymize it in different ways if that's necessary, but you just got to keep plugging away. And I think both the professional societies and the industry associations can be a good conduit there in essentially what is trust building. But obviously, the more data you can get, the better. More that the machine learning can learn on and such. At the same time, when you're talking about the mapping and such, there are very good maps out there on a regional and larger scale, national scale. But there's a lot of people coming into geothermal now, as exemplified by this conference. A lot of the interest focused on the engineering side that may not appreciate the uncertainties and the subjectivities on the earth science side. And that's one of those things that concerns me. You can get a false sense of confidence from looking at the maps. They're aggregating the data and it takes a lot of digging to get into what are the uncertainties involved, especially like if you're using BHT data. What are the judgment calls? There's extreme heterogeneities in data spacing, in data quality and such. that all evaporates when you're looking at these nice multicolored maps. And especially if you compare them side by side, you can see some real differences in subjective work behind the scenes. But back to the raw data, there's a lot of data. We just got to keep plugging away. People here on the other people here on the panel and other panels that are on the other side of the industry academic equation might want to chime in on what can we do to get some of that data out. Thank you.
So if it's okay, I'll come in now. The data side is clearly something very important to CGG, and it's really one of our foundations. A way that we're quite familiar with from the commercial and industry side of things is the multi-client model. So, you know, having a group of operators who have shared goals, shared interests, common thinking to come together and share their data, share their learnings. Okay, you lose a bit of that exclusivity, which you know, can be handled in different ways, but you can have a much broader scope, both geologically, technically, and geographically, by coming together, sharing that data, sharing your knowledge, and then you can really make decisions as an industry of what are the best places to explore, and you know, how do we commercialize this on a bigger scale, and how do we share our resources to get further ahead. So I think for me that's a natural one is the multi-client side of things.
Can I just jump in here, Mike? I just wanted to continue. I fully agree with Ellie and Ken what they were talking about, but I just want to jump in on the resolution that Ken was mentioning. And I think one of the things we need to move on, and I'm going to take a peek at the geophysicist here, but it's instead of having there is such a wide range of interpretation in geophysical models that come behind it, that we need to move into almost like a probability geophysical map, where you actually have, if you can have a number, for example, probability of hitting permeability, probability, that is the value that can be fed into risk model for financial investment as well. And it's really important when you're trying to gather some, you know, obviously to gather some interest and gather some or limit your risk for exploration. So the need of, and that's what this need of increasing resolution, but as well increasing our understanding of uncertainty around the data set is really important for not only for, you know, for geologists that we always want, you know, more detail, but I think for us is to link with what Ellie was saying, is how we can convey and convince multi-client data set will be into lowering some of the risks that they have in investment, because at the end of the day, that's what will make them jump into exploration. So yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And your experience working with multi-client stakeholders really is also on my mind. You know, you've seen it from the ground up, and what it can take to bring folks to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, can I jump in as well?
Please.
Yeah. So excellent. So two comments I have to make here. So first of all, you know, the oil industry has been around for so much longer, and is so much bigger currently than the geothermal industry, right? So our business models around data and you know, everything we are doing with data are fragmented and are proprietary, and we are very sensitive about IP issues, and you know, companies you know, make money from the data, right? And I think we don't necessarily need to emulate that to geothermal to scale it up, because actually that will take, again, a long time, and we are going to, you know, make mistakes and learn from them, and, you know, just learn as we go. But we don't have time really for that as well. We cannot wait for decades for geothermal to, you know, become really a global industry everywhere, right? so that's the first comment I want to make. The second comment I want to make is related to what Ken said. Probably instead of having companies to lead an effort for collaboration and unified data, we have the professional societies, we have we have the government agencies, and I have an example actually from Open Subsurface Data Universe, OSDU, that is trying actually to unify under one umbrella all data related to oil and gas, and now to solar and wind, so they are jumping into renewable as well. So within SP, we try to attract them to give us more and more presentations about what they are doing and how they are doing. But probably that's something that we need at. I'm not saying they should do it, but something like that we should look at to find out ways to unify our data. And one more comment I would like to make. And so the last thing is that the data by itself is not useful unless we use it to increase production or improve our economics and so on. So we need to look at the data from the larger point of view, in which we have to work together with all the drillers and all the production engineers, surface engineers, and so on. So it's really a very collaborative effort that we have to do it right, because we don't have time to wait, just like to grow like the oil industry.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
We had a number of questions come in from the audience, kind of touching on things that we've already addressed, and maybe for everybody, I'll just put out there, there's a question about which tasks are really most appropriate in geothermal for machine learning and artificial intelligence. We touched on a few things maybe for folks to think about there. And other folks are curious about what are the key challenges in quantifying geothermal resource compared to, for example, hydrocarbon resource. And are we, I think this builds on Isabel's comment as well around risk and ways to de-risk, and earlier comments that you made, Sylvia, around how some of the technologies we see now may be doing that at low cost. So I'll just leave those out there if folks want to comment. Maybe on machine learning in particular. That's certainly a hot topic. And Ken, you touched on already.
I'll jump in. I did spend about a year in an AI startup, so I know just enough to be really dangerous in this topic. But again, those types, or that technique is most applicable when you have large data sets and in dimensions that you can correlate across things. And again, things like the bottom hole temperatures, the thermal conductivities, at least in my domain, are ripe for that. There are immense amounts of data out there. And it's currently just a lot of meat servo work to analyze that. So I think it's starting to, you're seeing a lot of funding flow into that area. We've got projects starting up in that area too. But one thing I don't want people to overlook is the anchor data. And it's a rather expensive aspect, but one thing that really is important to the calibrations, whether it's a machine learning tool or even a simple bottom hole correction algorithm, is a few high quality temperature logs, or temperature pressure logs are most common. They don't need a lot, but of course they're fairly expensive to get. You need an equilibrated well that's been static for a long time. So it's not high on most people's list, and whether you're building a budget or just prioritizing. So kind of a shotgun answer to your question. I'll yield the floor now.
Oh, that's great. It's calibration.
Can I jump, Mike?
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I fully agree with Jan. But I would like to say that, when we talk about data science, analytics, artificial intelligence, or that, they are just tools. So they are still greatly misunderstood. Even in the oil and gas industry, we have our challenges, to show the value. But so if you want to think fundamentally about them, they are really just mathematical and numerical models. The key is the quality of data and what kind of data data type we are getting, we are acquiring. And so from my point of view, because again, I spend so much time looking into this, I think the key is what data we are getting, how much data, the quality of data. And so everything goes around what sensors we have available, what technologies we have available to acquire the data. And so at that point, as I said earlier, when we started with telemetry, downhole telemetry for oil and gas applications, many operators question actually the cost for installing downhole sensors and optical fibers and so on. So it's a learning curve, and we need to prove actually that we know how to acquire data, what kind of data we need, and we are not wasting actually, a lot of sensors for acquiring data that we don't need. And so to me, actually, the key is the data acquisition.
Okay. Are there areas of active research? You touched on a few of them, Sylvia, but maybe for everybody, areas of active research in the oil and gas industry that you've seen successful applications recently to geothermal? And I put this to everybody. It may not be something that we've talked about.
So I do know that, the geothermal industry being a little bit smaller now than the oil and gas industries, they do look at, the cost of installing downhole telemetry. So assuming that they have the sensors that are, higher temperature than what is required for oil and gas, it's hard to justify for the operations to install, an optical fiber in a well, right? And so different startups actually are looking now at doing that. And so it's a work in progress. I'm very happy with the direction we are going to, but I'm not aware that, optical fibers are routinely installed in geothermal wells.
Maybe a different kind of question. So we've been talking about data access, and one of the questions from the audience was related to how we approach national oil companies or really national governments if in partnership environments. And it's maybe open to a lot of debate right now as we're seeing a burgeoning of this field globally.
Yeah, I think if I can jump in, I think one of the key is, and you were, I think that I don't know if it's kind of Sylvia that mentioned that. One of the key is to get some neutral organizations or geothermal organization that, like, IGA or New Zealand or what is inside of the IGA, to actually start this conversation with big companies, because there is in a protected, basically safe trust area, to start those conversations. Because it is, as you said, it is a fundamental that we have more shared data, even like, on a regional scale, not even just like multi-global. That's probably never going to happen. But even in the countryside, you can have some site 10 kilometer aside, and you don't share data. So it's quite, it's really important. One of the things is that to look as well, there is different legislation in different countries around data and data access. So I think as well, if you want to think globally, text model of where has been the most successful innovation. I mean, Europe has been pushing a lot in that sense. That's model to follow in terms of collaboration. But I think that needs to be led by mutual association that do not have a commercial. They are working for developing geothermal, but do not have a specific commercial incentive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, go ahead, Ellie.
So I think countries, individual governments and NOCs are already pursuing that track themselves to evaluate the geothermal potential in their own countries, their own areas. There is a huge amount of data available, publicly available. It's in different formats and not always easy to find, and has to be QC'd and collated. So it is definitely not an easy task. But there is quite a lot out there already. And going back to Isabel's comment about how we do this on kind of a bigger scale, almost global scale, it's going to be really challenging because data is a currency, right? I mean, and we protect it. Countries, companies protect it. So I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's what we need in a way to really accelerate geothermal on a global scale. But it's going to be very challenging from the kind of conversations that we've had to do that.
All right. We're getting questions around the expense of the data as well, and whether that's changing, or just to kind of think as an industry, for a geothermal industry perspective, how much money we're talking about this costing, a lot of the data sets to acquire, to process. I mean, is it on the scale of the oil and gas industry? I see discussions around seismic, and that's pretty expensive stuff.
Yeah, and that's where some of the challenges, right? We have a completely different price point in geothermal from oil and gas. So how do we overcome that? One of the ways in industry is multi-client, by sharing all different kinds of data sets. And that's what I'm most familiar with. But yeah, how do we, on a non-commercial basis, how can we do that when the data is being collected and has been very expensive generally to acquire? It's going to be a big challenge going forward.
Yeah. If we go back to kind of the research side, are there things that folks have done in recent years in the lab that are helping to test some of our base assumptions around geothermal? In particular, things that may be useful to calibrate or train, machine learning. That's a question from the audience. And I guess it's related to, more than anything, what parameters could be trained in the lab, if there's things that come to mind for folks.
I mean, obviously, for what that's touching particularly the group I'm working with, which is autothermal geochemistry, where we are simulating experimentally some of the reaction. It's quite important to calibrate your, particularly in terms of injectability. So to calibrate your reservoir you're going to get, and to better understand what will be the reservoir, like all reservoir you're going to get, but also the injectability, the potential for injection of non-combustible gas or things like that. So I think there is a and utilizing those data in terms of modeling, but those are already, when you already have a target, you already have an area. I think there's also what do you do when you don't have that? And there's probably a lot. There is probably a lot of data that are available, in oil and gas, like everyone is mentioning. There's a lot of data out there, but what do you do when you don't have the data where you have the site that is utilized? And I think that's where we need to refine some of our model about that. That's what the deep, basically what is the temperature of the crust at 1-2 kilometer, and that is something that is, yes, there is a lot of data. Yes, there is a lot in particularly in oil and gas, but those are not necessarily where you're gonna find your best potential. So I think there is also a try to utilize those data in a mindset that is, well, those are the data available right now. What do I need? So that will also target your next exploration. Therefore, in research, that's where you're gathering some research, but it needs to be low cost and needs to be quite fast. So I'm not sure that's a big challenge as well. I'm not sure we're going to do that. But I mean, that for us has been like, I mean, for example, if you're taking a small country like we have in New Zealand, it's very obvious that we have we have oil and gas field where you have heat at depths. There's no question. However, our best target was definitely not for the development of geothermal in the last 60 years, was not where you have the oil and gas. So, and even now, it's even the oil and gas field, that's still a low, it's still a medium temperature. It's still not a big, something that is like a game changer in terms of electricity generation, for example. So we need to be a little bit more mindset, I think, in the way we're gathering all those data. And I think it's where some of the research will be very, very important into refining some of the crystal temperature model to better target both and acquire then some precise regional data.
Yeah, cool. I know your work in volcanology in particular has really worked to better characterize that at a kind of even reservoir scale level, which I find as an oil and gas geologist pretty fascinating, the overlap there. I had maybe, oh yeah, go ahead, Ken.
If I can follow in on what Isabel said, a good case example of that refinement was done last year here under our Project Geo, working with the team at SMU, Joe Batir and Maria Richards, where they incorporated a better radiogenic heat production model for the upper crust to the basement, and did a deep dive on 3 sample counties across Texas on what that does to the temperature depth picture. And it was a fairly significant increase in the temperatures at depth, enough to make a significant economic difference if you're looking at putting together a project in that regard. So that's just, I think, an example of what you can do, essentially data mining. The data is already there. It's just reinterpreting and applying a new model to it that made a fairly hefty difference.
Cool. You know, I wanted to start a question maybe that you all can reflect on, and I'll start with you, Ken. It's around what you find to be kind of most exciting right now in geothermal, and maybe in the domain of data in general, but what keeps you up at night about the potential in this burgeoning field? And I know, Ken, you've even looked extraterrestrially at some of these data sets.
Ooh, that's a broad set of things. Let's see. What keeps me up at night, again, it goes back to there's a lot of people jumping in the field, and especially engineer background, that may not appreciate the pitfalls on the earth science side, or even the value of it. One thing I'd like to stress, and the engineering is frankly what's driving this reemergence or renaissance in geothermal, and it is, I find it very exciting too. But just as understanding the soil underneath the foundation of your house is critical, so is understanding the geoscience that you're going to. It's not just a matter of, oh, let's just drill here. We'll drill deep enough and we'll hit the temperature. Well, yes, if you've got unlimited money, resources, and time, but understanding and refining the geoscience or the earth picture is a matter of buying down risk and reducing the uncertainty. And that matters to everybody in the whole chain of developing a project. I'm already forgetting a couple of the intermediate questions, but one other.
Sure. Extraterrestrial.
Yeah, that's the one that stuck in my head because it's pretty offbeat and far out. But frankly, you know, we're getting close to seeing humans and more advanced robotic systems going outside the Earth in the solar system. Mars is an obvious near topic that might have humans on it fairly soon, and we're going to need energy there. The problem is, as you go out in the solar system from Earth, solar power drops off as the one over the square, and radioactive power sources, which have been our source for deep probes, have their own problems, which are pretty obvious to everybody. But there's possible geothermal power to be exploited in the outer solar system. Mars is iffy, but may have some. As you go farther out, the icy moons, as I'm starting to look at, have strong potential, where you have a 200°C gradient between subsurface oceans and the surface temperature. Okay, that's something you can work with. And so as we go farther out, I think it's time to start looking even at that. Those are long lead time, major engineering projects that aren't going to happen overnight, though.
Research to drive some innovation. Yeah, I guess I was thinking also remote sensing is really in a renaissance now as well, and higher resolution than ever.
Yes, and we're seeing particularly things like INSAR and satellite-based radar being very useful, particularly in active systems, in conventional systems and active producing systems, at measuring changes, or looking for where the tectonic activity might open up fractures and such. I'd be curious to know what the industry folks and others think on this.
Anybody else? I know you all are excited people about a lot of different things. So
it's hard to follow Ken, right, with extraterrestrial. So back down to earth. I guess my one on the client side would be, I'm amazed and excited at the different types of clients that are coming to talk to us about geothermal. You know, clients a year ago that I never would have thought would be interested or thinking about how it fits in with their strategy. They've always focused on oil and gas, and now they're seriously looking at geothermal and how they can build that into their portfolio. So to me, it's, you know, we need the commercial, the industry interest in it to really get it moving at a fast pace.
I think you touched on something here, like it's like we need to be faster. There's no question about it. Like fast, yeah, because I mean that is one of the exciting thing about being in geothermal right now, is seeing the enthusiasm that is coming in and seeing some of the innovation and development that is happening. It's fantastic, and I think there's, you know, it's the geothermal industry is just a wide range as well of techniques and even like energy source, right? We're not looking at just one product. So it's multi-client, multi-product, and the utilization of the heat, not only, you know, it's not just generation, it's the utilization of the heat as well. So it's really challenging, but we really need to find some a more like globalized approach and a more as we mentioned before, you know, like a sharing data and having a common innovation, because we're just not fast enough right now to transition, to help the transition. So that would be my take on. But what a great time to be at that pivotal. Oh, what a pun. Not intended, but it's really a pivotal times really for geothermal. You know, geothermal has been it's an old industry. It has been here for a long time, and seeing now so much interest into it, that's bringing so much opportunity for development and innovation, and maybe a new geothermal, you know, like almost a tool, like something. So yeah, I mean, for me, that's what's kept me. It's like, it's, you know, being part of this change and being part of yeah, this innovation. It's quite exciting time.
May I?
Please.
Excellent comments. I would just say, you don't know what you don't know. So, you know, I guess everybody nowadays in the oil and gas industry is really excited about geothermal. I can hear it everywhere. I receive a lot of messages in my inbox every day about geothermal now. So I think everybody agrees the potential is huge, right? Now, the problem is way too complex to have only one solution, and so, you know, in terms of topics, building, production, you know, subsurface characterization, facilities, surface facilities, all these are really great topics that need new solutions and need somehow to be, you know, implemented together in a geothermal project. However, the type of project is not unique. It depends on, you know, around the world. We are talking even electricity versus power. This is thermal. So you know, it's really hard to come up with only one solution. So what I truly believe is how we can accelerate innovation and how we can collaborate all together to use all our expertise, diversify expertise. Actually, even if we fail, we learn from our failures, but we need to progress faster. And so that's actually the key. There is not one solution for geothermal, but we have to work together to find our ways into how to develop geothermal resources.
You know, from the oil and gas industry perspective, I'm really interested in the areas of specific overlap. And I think we've all identified several, you know, in the drilling realm, in the low and high temperature reservoir realm, in areas related to, you know, for instance, log data that we talked about, And I guess the question I would have too is, if those, are there other areas that you guys see where we've already been seeing really useful overlap, really useful progress, collaboration? And I focus on oil and gas in particular because I know that really it's also a very old industry that's had a long-term profit model test of what it's doing. And innovation in it really has been driven by the need to produce more effectively, for example, in the Permian. I'm really interested in other areas in this conference, for example, where they're exploring the possible applications of that type of technological approach, for example, and how, how can we work smarter and not harder, as it were? So I guess a question, for folks who touch on the industry a little bit is are you seeing, new areas where this is collaborative work that's coming, or areas where you would hope to see it?
I think it's slightly not totally directly answering your question there, Mike, but I think the new entries into the industry, so our new graduates, are bringing in a huge number of new ideas and new skill sets. And the geoscientists, they're all data scientists as well. It's tough to keep up with the pace that they have, and they're looking at things in a very different way. So I think going forward, it's going to be really exciting to watch that new generation and how they bring what they've learned from university and from the early years in their oil and gas career into geothermal and into the energy transition as a whole.
That's a great point. Yeah, because people are our biggest resource, really.
Yeah.
One area that is crossing over, but will need even more intense work, and it's kind of an elephant in the room, is the seismicity issues. We here also run the seismic monitoring system for Texas, and have developed quite a close partnership agreement with both regulators and industry on real-time monitoring of induced seismicity, tracking its trends, reacting to it and such. And as the new geothermal paradigm anywhere will be placing drilling in and around cities to a large degree, as well as the already established direct use, particularly in Europe and other parts where it's been a critical issue. Porting over all that knowledge and developing new is critical. And a very tough problem is characterizing the potential for seismicity in advance. And so that's another one of those data areas where it's going to be in everybody's interest to pool knowledge and pool resources so that doesn't become a showstopper to developing this field.
It's a very good point. Yeah.
Well, we're working on discussing in great detail all of these risk elements. I guess one thing, Ken, I wonder is, are there government data sets that we would be building off anyway? And I know that in industry, that's a typical approach to begin to look for, for example, for earthquake seismicity. And maybe that's an area where industry could see their own data sets, being willing to share. I don't know. That's a question.
I don't know that I have a broad answer to that. There, obviously here in the U.S., the U.S. Geologic Survey is the collector of that, and our system here in Texas feeds into that. As there are multiple projects brewing regionally, we are designing the monitoring systems for those, and that kind of data will be public. It's part of our mission. The Bureau, I didn't say at the beginning, is also the State Geologic Survey for Texas. So pretty much by definition, unless there's some reason otherwise, that data will become public. And I think largely that type of data anyway is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's the same in New Zealand, obviously, which is a very active country. We have a different, I would say, I don't know if I could say that, sensitivity around seismic, and because we always feel some little earthquake. So that's quite, people are quite used to it, to be honest. That doesn't mean that it's not important. There is the national, so, you know, GNS, we are collecting obviously all the, and cataloging all the earthquake and monitoring. And so if you have some earthquake happening in the geothermal system, there is also part of the knowledge that there is, like, in the company, that it's private. But there is a big difference between those big data collection. I think we don't have some people looking at it as well in terms of for the geothermal specific, because they are so important for just hazard analysis that they are not necessarily, there's very few people that use, I mean, you can use all of this data, but the network for hazard monitoring and the network for seismicity, subsidence, all of these factors that could be associated with geothermal, it's not necessarily the same. So it's really important, I think, to merge as well the scientists in those two systems, because there is this little bit of realignment between the data sets that are gathered nationally for hazard monitoring and some of the data set that needs to be associated with geothermal risk utilization.
Yeah, thanks for that fascinating example. It's certainly an area you've seen a lot of detail on. I'm going to try to make sure we ask a couple of audience questions, and they may not be for everybody, but one question is, how much of the oil and gas subsurface modeling workflow can be directly applied to the geothermal industry? And I think, Elliot, you touched on this a little bit in terms of the people and what they're working. I guess subsurface modeling workflow is a broad term, but we touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, so there are a lot of similarities between the two. I think obviously the main difference is temperature is key, temperature and flow rates. So you can use similar softwares, but you have to make some adjustments to those, and there's a lot of different factors that you have to bring in. I think one of the main differences when we look at geothermal models is our use of multi-physics data. That's not something that's typically used in the oil and gas to the same extent. But I think one of the things that's really struck me is the amount of transferable skills. I know there's a lot of people out there with a very strong oil and gas background who are trying to transfer over into geothermal. And there really are a lot of the fundamentals that we learn in the oil and gas industry can be applied to geothermal.
Okay. Well, folks, we're at 5 minutes or so left. I hate to cut us short, but I wanted to leave some time for folks to reflect and make a closing remark or two if you wanted. And I was going to go in the reverse order that I did earlier and maybe start with you, Silvio.
Well, thank you, Mike. Really great panel. I enjoyed it. As closing remarks, I would like to say I'm a strong believer in data and collaboration, and geothermal has huge potential for scaling up. And I believe that data science and analytics and closer collaborations among all of us are critical for making geothermal work everywhere faster. So the geothermal community needs to unite in order to be more competitive to other renewable technologies such as solar and wind. I think we need to reflect on that a little bit more. But yes, I do believe the geothermal community needs to unite, and so the time to act is now.
Cool. All right. How about you, Ken?
Yes, thanks, Mike. This is the most exciting time by far in geothermal that I've seen since I started in the 90s. And it's just tremendous. The synergy that's coming from blending the oil and gas world with the geothermal world is tremendous. And we're going to see more from that. So I'm looking forward to more people getting into this area and bringing some fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. And a key thing that we haven't mentioned is the ability to learn the 101s. I saw a course just recently, I don't remember who was sponsoring that one, on essentially Geothermal 101. The AEPG is doing one in September for one day that gives folks in the oil and gas industry a more basic grounding, as well as actually venture capital world and government regulatory world, a starting point to dive deeper in this area. But very exciting time, and thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Appreciate it. How about you, Ellie?
Well, thanks, my fellow panelists. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think for me, I'm optimistic because the number of people that we've spoken to over the last year who weren't thinking about geothermal before, who didn't have it on their radar, who were very firmly in the oil and gas camp, you know, now they're thinking about geothermal in a whole new way. And they want to evaluate their acreage, their areas of geographic interest for geothermal potential. And they're thinking about the end use. You know, it's not just power anymore. It's how do we assess the local markets? How do we fit geothermal into our overall opportunities? And to me, that's really exciting, because it's the operators out there that need to make this change, that need to drive this forward. So I will be watching Pivot with a lot of excitement this week, and I'll be looking for ways to collaborate with people throughout the conference. So thanks very much.
Great. Isabel?
Yeah, quickly, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, that was a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for the invite. And as you said, it's such an opportunity right now, and such a game changer, really. And I just wanted to reiterate what Sylvia said about the fact that the geothermal community needs to unite. It's not only reunite, I think it needs to be reborn as well. So yeah, charge.
Great. I'm really, really excited to see what we all do next and what we do next as a community. And thank you so much for all your input, panel. And it's amazing to talk to you and amazing to meet you. And let's go have a great conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.